Nice to meet you, Kristian. Can you tell us about yourself and BuildAI?
Sure. Good to meet you also, Faye. Thanks for interviewing me. BuildAI is an Australian technology company. I've emerged from the industry. I founded the business in 2019, so we're 5.5 years old. And I spent just over 20 years working in the construction industry in Australia and overseas. And really, the idea of BuildAI came about because of my first-hand experience working in the coalface, as in like right on the site, delivering these large high-rise towers or large infrastructure projects, and realising just how inefficient the industry is. And everyone in the industry still to this day has very poor work-life balance, because things are done manually and there's no adoption of technology at a large scale yet. And so what that translates to is an industry that requires people to spend 50 or 60 hours every single week on these large projects, doing things, highly repetitive tasks, the manual way, just in order to keep these large operations flowing and moving. And with all of that effort, we still see a huge challenge in terms of profitability and feasibility, because large projects are always running significantly over time and over budget. And Australia, alongside a lot of other huge countries around the world, has very large challenges when it comes to providing affordable housing and delivering the actual number of new buildings that these growing cities needs. And the reason is that they just cannot build them efficiently enough. And so what we're doing at BuildAI is introducing a disruptive solution to the problem, whereby we leverage AI, computer vision technology, to unlock productivity gains, so that the construction teams have a better work-life balance, can manage these large-scale projects more efficiently, which ultimately translates to being able to build better, safer and faster.
Okay, so now apart from the Man from Mars, what are BuildAI's current cooperation plans?
What we recognise is that the technology ecosystem is going to be formed with a whole bunch of startups. I don't think there's going to be any one particular construction tech solution that does everything. And so the collaborations we're working on are with some of the adjacent technologies, so that we can offer our customers, the developers and the contractors, an integrated solution which leverages the expertise of multiple small startups.
Okay, so what do you believe are the main factors contributing to low productivity on construction site globally?
I'd say the two key issues would be the traditional systems being used to design and procure material for job sites is not being done in a way which allows it to be modularised and allows it to be at a much larger scale. And what I mean by that is, you've got large construction sites with these huge tower cranes, and these tower cranes are only moving relatively small pieces of material. And they've obviously got to do hundreds of lifts every day just to get enough material on the site. But if the design was done differently, we could really leverage offsite prefabrication much better, and then deliver much larger components, so the tower crane is then using its full capacity and lifting in much larger components, which translates to the building being constructed faster. And then the other thing that contributes towards the low productivity or low efficiency is the reliance and coordination on manual labour, because On average, 50% of people's time on these large-scale construction sites is spent doing non-productive, non-critical work. So having a better system in place that can understand exactly which areas need which type of labour, and a better system of organising how to get the correct labour to these different areas can significantly improve labour productivity.
Okay, so next question is, what are the biggest challenge in producing enough affordable housing, and how can governments and private sectors collaborate to address these issues?
I think the biggest challenge is because governments and large developers fail to take a large holistic view, and they're only ever focusing on one or a small handful of developments at any one time. And because there's not that scale, it's difficult to implement a change or a new way of doing things, because unless you actually have a commitment that's longer term and a scale that's large enough, it's difficult to facilitate an environment where these new innovations can actually be properly adopted. And we've seen that on occasions when the government has experimented doing modular construction for schools here in Australia, and they set up an initiative to have schools built from a kit of parts, almost like a big IKEA store. And the reason it didn't end up becoming successful is because the first package that they let, when the contractors were trying to figure out how to adopt this new approach, initially it was a bit uneconomical, but they didn't get given a long enough time to work through the new systems. And then before they had a chance to actually implement it, the first couple of buildings ended up not being cheaper, and so the initiative was cancelled.
So what strategy can be implemented to mitigate the skilled labor shortage in the construction industry?
So we think the BuildAI's technology is addressing that challenge with two ways. Number one, the reason there's a skilled labour shortage is because the labour pool isn't large enough. And the reason the labour pool isn't large enough is because construction doesn't attract a very large demographic. We don't see a lot of younger generations finishing school and wanting to join the construction industry because it's so old-fashioned. Nobody, as a young kid coming through university, is getting excited about the idea of working 6 days a week for 50 hours or more every week. And technology enables that to be reimagined. We often hear from executives in construction companies that are trying to find young talent, and when they're faced with questions about, do I really need to work 6 days a week? What if I only want to work 4 days a week? They don't actually have the flexibility built into their operational structures, and so they're missing out on that and working from home. And then the other way, so it's that first piece is the demographic challenge, and that they've only got a very small segment. They don't have a lot of participation from females. They don't have a lot of participation from the younger generation. And we, through technology, can actually change that, because you actually can work from home and still be digitally connected to a construction site. So through BuildAI's cameras and BuildAI's technology, you don't have to be physically present on site in order to know exactly what's going on and to manage it. And so it's technology like ours which can mean that you can offer greater flexibility and attract a bigger workforce.
To monitor everything at site.
Yes, to monitor, to administer, to control processes. The other side of the question for me is the skilled labour challenge is partly also because of a changing culture. So if we think about our parents and our grandparents, those older generations would often find a job with a good company and be happy to stay with that company until they retire. And there's many stories, especially in construction now, which is still very old-fashioned, where people have been working there for 30 or more years. And those people obviously become very well skilled, very used to the company's policies and procedures.
Yes.
However, the new generation doesn't work like that. And the average tenure might be 2 years at the most before they're wanting to change companies,
Yes,
change
exactly.
careers. And so when you don't have people there as long, you have to look to other ways of establishing minimum standards. And again, this is where technology like ours can automatically prompt certain protocols and certain standards, which assists when there's that skills gap because people just aren't spending as long with each company.
So next question is, how do you see the future of the construction industry evolving in terms of productivity, affordability, and workforce skills?
I think in the future, when businesses have properly understood how technology can work to help them, the future of construction will be much more efficient. Large job sites will be able to work effectively with much smaller management teams, and those management teams will have the ability to stay connected to that site every minute that the site is open, but not necessarily have to be present. We also will have better performing outcomes because of efficiencies of labour and supply chain management. So we'll actually be able to build faster and more efficiently with less mistakes because of leveraging technology to do a lot of the checks and a lot of the process automation, which sometimes gets missed by human error. And when you can start building cheaper and faster, you can actually reduce significantly the cost of construction, which will then allow developers to offer cheaper prices for the finished product, which means in residential, affordable housing can start becoming more of a reality.
So before we end this interview, another question I want to ask that all the case you said about is all the Australian case situation or all over the world. I believe that there's definitely a difference between Australia area and others.
Yeah, I would say in my experience, I've spent a lot of time in North America, the UK, neighbouring European countries, Asia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Middle East. And there's very similar challenges in construction in terms of efficiency, in terms of lacking labour productivity, in terms of trying to create affordable housing and also attract the workforce, skilled labour shortages. So a lot of these themes we're addressing are very much internationally focused. And in fact, for BuildAI, we're probably spending about 75% of our effort on overseas opportunities and only 25% on Australia.
Okay, I see. So let's end up this invitation. So thank you, Kristian.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Pleasure.
you.